Hi guys, welcome to BitGrid's series of webinars. I am your host for today, Avirup Chatraj. So I would be presenting ethics in AI and the art of web scraping. So a general introduction about me. I am Avirup. So I am a campus ambassador of BitGrid at SRM Institute of Science and Technology. I currently co-founded a data science community at SRM, which I am currently heading. I'm also working as an associate tech lead at Microsoft Student Partners Club. So the data science community is currently supported by BitGrid as well as data camp education, where we are trying to solve real world problems and issues using your artificial intelligence, machine learning, and obviously data science. So the seminar for today is ethics in AI and the art of web scraping. So first of all, we would be starting with ethics in AI. So now, first of all, what is ethics? Ethics can be defined as some moral rules or arguments that help you in order to take a morally correct decision. So these are types something of a rules which help you in the not even in the business case, but in obviously in your life in order to take a correct decision, which would obviously for good or right. Now, the problem that has started arising with artificial intelligence and machine learning solutions are that they are growing at a very rapid pace. So, it is fundamental for a practitioner to understand where ethics come in AI. Now, each and every the various giants, the various researchers in this field have now started dealing with these issues that are currently coming with AI solution. Because the thing is that some of these AI solutions that are currently being deployed are something called typically as black box from a software testing. So what is typically a black box is that you cannot reverse engineer that black box. So you won't understand what is happening inside that. And on a later stage, when artificial intelligence increases at a very rapid pace, this could lead to a number of issues. The first issues is that we ourselves, humans who would be designing that AI solution, won't know how the solution is trying to predict out the outcome. It may lead to bias being introduced in the model. We may even not be able to properly explain the model. So let's start with the issues that comes in case of AI. Now, AI is growing at a rapid pace, and this has brought a whole host of issues that we need to deal as practitioners or future leaders in case of AI. Some of the issues that we are currently facing now are: one is your unemployment, inequality, artificial stupidity, yes, stupidity, then racist bias, evil genies, singularity, and robot rights. So these are okay terms that obviously you may have got to know about them, that these are fundamental ethical issues, but let's try to relate them with examples. So the first thing is unemployment. Obviously AI has started to become a market leader, and it's driving automation like anything. Automation is being pushed in each and every of the industry, be it any service based industry, be it any technical industry. Each and every industry are trying to reduce the manpower. First of all, manpower is getting cut down because of AI being present in all the systems. If you take if you take a factory that was around 20 years earlier and a factory that is currently, you would understand the amount of automation that happens now. Yeah, big factories of major brands such as Coca-Cola, Pepsi, the level of automation that they have in their factories, yeah, it takes around less than around 10 to 15 people in order to run a factory, whereas earlier each and everything was an hand driven job. So unemployment is one of the most biggest factor that one of the most biggest factor and an issue that has come because of AI is leading to the cutting of jobs, leading to unemployment. But is there another side to this coin? Obviously, as AI is now booming at such a rapid pace, So we obviously need skilled practitioners, and this in turn is going to create job opportunity. But this also creates an issue in order for industries, in order for government, because for skilled practitioners, you need to train those people in order for them to become skilled practitioner. That is why if you see our college, each and everywhere, if you see a lot of emphasis is being given on these new growing skills such as data science, AI, and stuff like that. The second thing that comes into the matter is inequality. Inequality has started now propagating because of AI, and it is one of the biggest downside because if you see earlier what used to happen in a industry, or let's say any type of a service sector job, what used to happen is that a person who was employed by the company was going to be paid by the amount of hourly work he used to do. And it is common practice that you would be paid for the amount of work. Let's say 9 to 5, the amount of work that you are doing, you are going to pay according. But AI is bringing a serious inequality there, because if you see the various tech giants, the various tech giants such as Google, Amazon, Apple, they are driving AI automation innovation like anything. This has led to people slowly losing their jobs and everything, and the whole lot of money is now being shifted into these big market leaders. Now, the third thing that we need to come into our mind is artificial stupidity. Now, what is artificial stupidity? If any of you people who have joined currently for the seminar, if you people know something about artificial intelligence or a model making, how a model. So first of all, a model is going to learn on the data. It is typically trained on the data. It starts finding underlying patterns, and it uses those underlying patterns in order to predict an outcome. Now, the thing about artificial stupidity that comes of the matter is that not each and every AI solution is perfect at first. It is not an in software terms, it is not a waterfall model, but it is a continuously an iterative process that goes on and on. We train the model, we find out we predict out the outcomes, we are going to get a result out of that, we are going to check that result using various metrics, we are trying to explain our model, then we are again going to backtrack if our evaluation is not properly validated or verified to the initial state. The next thing that comes into the matter for your artificial stupidity is an example that happened with Uber self-driving cars. We know self-driving cars has started as an increased type of a hype or something, with companies such as Google, Uber are being the market leaders in these technologies, are coming out with these cars and everything. So in November of 2019, one accident happened with Uber self-driving car, in which a car hit an pedestrian, and because of that, pedestrian got injured, and she finally succumbed to her injuries. After the NTSB, the National Transport Safety Board of USA, did a thorough investigation on this, they found out that the main reason of the injury happening to the pedestrian was because the not the car, the software that was driving that car, in that case the AI that was programmed for that, it did not have in its programming the thing that if let's say the software is able to find out a person who is not at a zebra crossing, then it must not it won't stop there. So what happened during that incident was that the self-driving car was not properly able to judge that pedestrian who was on a cycle, and it was a night, and the driver, if you see the photo, it was something like that only. The driver, because as these cars are currently now being tested, the driver was using her phone in order to stream one of the shows from Netflix. So after that, when finally the AI system got the issue, and it found out the issue, it was just let's say 10 seconds earlier, and the braking started happening, and the driver understood that there is an issue. and she reacted, but the reaction was not that much appropriate, and they finally struck the pedestrian who was on the road, and she finally succumbed to a injury. So this is one of the things of artificial stupidity, that the program was not that much intelligence enough to be on the road, but still they were testing it on the road. They needed to do some close testing before releasing these cars in the public. And obviously Uber has now Uber was thoroughly investigated, and they said that their all the systems and everything has been designed according to the principle that they shouldn't harm humans. But then also that incident happened. Now the next thing is one of the thing called as racist bias. The racist bias is a problem that happens in case of AI systems, because first of all, there is the thing that there may be the thing that a bias can happen because of the person who is designing the system, and after designing the system, the artificial intelligence system can multiply the bias around 100 times. So what happened in case of a racist bias system was that the Google's photo app was using an algorithm in order to find out people and tag them in that case. So it because of the low level of images, or not a proper not a proper sample that they had for the population, they started tagging African people as your apes and monkeys. So the main thing about the fact of the matter is that their algorithms were not properly calibrated in order to handle the bias, and this obviously led to the introduction of this racist bias. Next after that is the term called as evil genies. So this is something that may happen when the artificial intelligence rises to another level, that is called as because artificial intelligence is divided into three terms: the artificial narrow intelligence, and the main one is the artificial future intelligence. So let's say when the AI goes to the time of artificial future intelligence, and you tell the AI in order to say, let's cure cancer from this whole world. So it may be possible that the AI model would be like, okay, you need to cure cancer from all the people. Let's just wipe out the whole human civilization. So if you wipe out the whole human civilization, obviously your cancer is going to get eliminated. So all evil genies may come into. Singularity is another term that in if we see in the whole civilization and everything that has happened in history, we humans have not been murdered or killed by the animals and everything. It's just because of our intelligence. We are at the top of each and every human chain just for the matter that we are intelligent enough in order to control those people, control those species and everything. So what would happen in the future is that, let's say if the artificial intelligence softwares become that much intelligent that they come over us in the hierarchy, it can lead to another type of an issue. And the final thing is robot rights. It's also something related to your artificial future intelligence, when we may have robots roaming in the street, in our houses and everything. This fact of the matter is that we humans, each and every one of us had our seniors had to fight for their own rights. So it may obviously come on the matter that how are you going to treat the robots who can feel, who can perceive things? Are you going to treat them as animals, or are you going to treat them as proper human beings, or not proper human beings, let's say, but proper machines that have feeling? So these are some of the ethical issues that have started being present in AI and have become a big booming issue that are currently being researched by your leading men in these fields in order to frame laws, frameworks, so we could be within those frameworks and laws in order to design the solutions, and finally the solutions can be possibly implemented at a large scale. So this is another meme that if I poop and you spread it around the room, who gets the blame? So that is what that. Let's say if we backtrack to that Uber example, now who's going to be blamed? Obviously, it may be the driver was at some type of a fault, but the main issue now comes in the matter is that the solution was still not correct of being led onto the road. So if you have any questions and anything, please put in the chat. We would be handling all the questions finally at the last. So the next thing is some of the infographics I put. So these are the 8 ethical questions of AI. Different companies are finding out the different questions and everything. So first is that only bias is the AI fear liability. Who's responsible for the AI? Then understand from the Uber example, security. How do we protect access to the AI from bad actors in that case? Now, human interaction. Will we stop talking to one another? Then employment, is AI getting rid of jobs? That was explained. Now wealth inequality, the same thing of companies becoming rich and people losing their jobs. Power control, who decides how to deploy AI? And robot rights, can AI suffer? So the AI ethics need to be a type, or it needs to be properly framework, and these are some of the things that are currently being thought of, that we can have the system, we can have the frameworks in such a way that first of all, the system should be human led. They should be transparent. They should be explainable. That the models that we are trying to deploy, they need to be completely explainable. After that, they should be reversible and trainable. So, and another thing is, let's say, yeah, that the ethics in AI, that it needs to be transparent. Whatever model that we are trying to deploy, it needs to be auditable. And one of the best things that can be done is that these things may be made open source so that other people can see and contribute and can judge whether the thing. That is why open source has suddenly grown so much than closed third party software, because you don't know what is happening under the whole block. You are just using the final product. So in open source, everything is open and you can try to mitigate the issues yourself if you have the current knowledge, or else you would at least know what is happening inside the solution that you are trusting to use. Now, it should be explainable, interpretable, ability to explain the workings in language, and obviously it needs to be fair. It should try to reduce the bias in each and every. And now these are the responsible parties of AI. So for AI, the three people who are responsible is that, first of all, the data scientists who develop the AI tool. So they are typically are going to be very much responsible for what type of an AI solution they are designing and they are bringing to the market. The second thing is the field experts who provide the trained data. As these AI solutions are going to learn upon data. So if the data has some sort of a bias against other people or other thing, then that bias is only going to get multiplied if it's not properly prepared, processed, or trained. So if we could be able to filter out the bias at that moment only, so it would lead to better solutions in the future. And obviously, we as users of the tools need to be also responsible of what AI solutions we are using, and how the AI solutions are being used. So this was all about ethics in AI. So whatever questions you guys have, you can you please explain the robot bias again? Yeah, sure. I would take your question, Abhinav, at the last, then after completing the web scraping part. Yeah. So now, what is web scraping? Web scraping is basically a technique which is used in order to extract large amounts of data from a website and then store it in a local file. So web scraping is also known by various other terms such as data harvesting. You can just take all of those data that are hosted on a website and then just copy it onto your local device for analysis and other stuff. So what are the business looking for through web scraping? So through web scraping, what businesses get are ultimately, obviously, the only thing that you can get from through web scraping is data. And this data can be used by some companies, let's say, for comparing prices. So for comparing prices, it could be like, we have your e-commerce site, that is newly coming into the market. And it wants to see that how much it needs to price a certain product, and then only it can sell that product to the customers. So it may happen that it may already scrape the data that is available at Amazon, Flipkart, and some other third-party sellers, and get their data, do a proper analysis, and then make the price for their particular product. The second thing that can be done is for the satisfaction of customers. You can take all the tweets that are hosted, or you can take all the tweets you can about a certain product from, let's say, if you harvest the data from Twitter, or in case of various e-commerce applications, you have the thing of review. So you can also take the review of each and everything of the data, just harvest all of the data, and after harvesting you can do a proper sentiment analysis, or you can do an analysis based on the data, that how that data is means how is that product for your customers, are the customers facing issue because of that. So you can try to deal issue, you can try to solve those issues. And finally we have your generating the potential lead. So now what a person can get from web scraping can obviously be used as somebody's personal project or something like that. Okay. So you can, let's say you can just web scrape all the favorite memes on your favorite sites from GP. You can scrape all of your GP memes regarding to a certain topic. You can even scrape your social site contents from Twitter. You can scrape data for, let's say, what are the trending topics that are currently happening. You it can also be possible that your mom is going to make food and everything, so from proper cooking blogs and everything, because all of the data, we need to understand a simple thing, that all of the data which is posted on the internet is in any form or the other based on the three our typical technologies, that is our HTML, CSS, JavaScript. So if in any way can we download those data and parse the data, we can obviously do a proper analysis of that. We can store those data for, let's say, future purposes. So this is how web scraping can also be used by a person. Now, how does a typical web scraping, something in web scraping that you need to know is that how is the web scraping pipeline properly programmed? Now, the thing about web scraping is that in case of web scraping, most all of the web scraping things follow a three-step procedure. The three-step procedure you can is setup, acquisition, and processing. Now, the setup in that case is you need to first of all have your problem understanding. What is your problem understanding? What are you trying to scrape? If you don't have the proper question or the proper objective, you can obviously not scrape that data. The second thing that you need to do is that you need to identify your sources. That your data for your data requirement stage, you need to know which source, which URL you want to scrape all the data from. After setup, you need to do the acquisition. That is, in this stage, finally, you are going to use your web scraping tools in order to do the data collection. You need to access the raw data, and after that, you can parse that data. After acquisition, you can do processing. Yeah, you can obviously do on this data analytics, machine learning, or stuff like that. So, web scraping is one of the biggest toolkit for a data scientist or for an artificial intelligence. Uh, because in case of a real world, the data that is provided to you is never in a CSV file. You would be told by your managers a simple problem statement, and it is now on you on how you are going to get the data. So web scraping is one of the killer tool in a person's data science toolkit. Now, the tools which we are going to use for this webinar as a whole is your Python, Scrapy, and Request library. So Scrapy, I would be coming after. So Request is a simple module that helps you in order to access HTML files, the HTML content. Python is a Python 3, the greatest language on earth, and Scrapy is a Python package that mostly is used for web scraping and web crawling tasks. It is a very big module package, if you want to say, has lots of functions So it becomes very difficult to cover. So I will be covering the most essential parts that you require in order to start scraping websites, start making sense of what there is on the website. So in order to scrape a website, I thought that I need to first of all make you people understand a simple bit and thing about HTML. So HTML stands for your hypertext markup language. So it got created by Tim Berners-Lee, and HTML is used to mainly define the structure or the skeleton of your website. It is a markup language and not a programming language. So it uses tags, and the current versions that we are running of HTML is the HTML5. Now, excuse me, in case of HTML, there is something called as a DOM structure. Now, what is a DOM structure? So DOM stands for Document Object Model. So what DOM provides is that DOM is simply going to provide a tree-like structure for all web pages to follow. And this tree-like structure is very important in order to understand. And people from the field of computer science, they would know that we people are going to love trees, not the trees that are outside, but the trees, mathematical representation of your trees. So let's start with your simple thing called as HTML tree. Now, HTML can be interpreted, as I told, as a tree-like structure. So here, if you can see that we have a code here, that is your, it starts with your root HTML element. Then we do not have a head for the simplicity's sake. We start with the body. We have a division div, it's just a container, and then we have the paragraph. So this same code can be then translated into something called as a tree-like structure. So what happens in your tree-like structure is that we have the HTML, we have the body, we have the div, we have your paragraph tags and the paragraph tags here. So this got converted, and each and every red line here is called as the generation. That is, using scraping, we can traverse from one generation to another and jump. So as we go down the tree, we can go to the different elements which are present in the document. Let's say we want to access the p tag that has the data element as hello world in your div in your body. So we would write a notation that I would be covering later, called as HTML slash body slash div slash p slash text, and it would just p slash p of one and slash text. It would read out you to this hello world that is present in the p. And similarly, using these notations, using called something called as CSS selectors, locators, or XPath notation, you can go to anywhere in the tree, and you can these things make web scraping so much easier rather than using the old traditional tools, because through these tools you can go to anywhere you want inside the whole hierarchy of your tree. Now, I needed to explain to you a simple thing about HTML tags and attributes if people don't know a bit. So, what is your tag? So, simply tag here, if you see, is that a tag name is a typical HTML element is going to comprise of three things. The first thing is going to be your tag name, the attribute, and the element that is present within the starting and the closing tag. So these are the three things that it is made. So I've taken an example here of div. So div is your division or a container that is can be used to group some elements together. We are using something called as an ID. ID is a unique identifier for your tag in that case, or your HTML element. That is, the class is also used to using CSS. A class is used in order to apply some set of, let's say, special information for a number of elements, and it need not be unique. It can have the same values for the different elements, but ID needs to be different for each and every other elements. So we also have attributes, which are like special information for the elements. So yeah, so this is the first thing that we are going to I'm going to explain, and then we would code a certain part about it. Uh, uh, Something called as an XPath notation. You may ask me, the question is that why, man, why are you going for something like Scrapy? We have something that each and every person who has used Python may know of, Beautiful Soup. The problem with Beautiful Soup happens is that Beautiful Soup is an awesome library and I don't have any issues with that. The only thing is that it does not support XPath and CSS. Now, XPath and CSS locators provide you a certain type of an advantage, be it you a beginner. It helps you to traverse the whole DOM structure that I told you, the document object model of the whole HTML tree, using very simple amount of code, rather than using your Beautiful Soup in which you have to program each and every element and how to go there. So XPath typically stands for XML path language. Now, what is XPath? It's typically like SQL. It is going to be a query language for your HTML and XML document. XPath was developed by the World Wide Web Consortium W3C, and it first appeared in 1990. Now I'm going to show you how and why XPath is so much powerful. So I told you about something there. So this is the tree structure. Okay, this is the code. HTML, we have a code here, body. And in the body, we have a span element. We have three divs and we have a code. Now we need to go to this div. So how are we going to go to this div using an XPath notation? XPath notation makes it very easy. In order to jump from one of your generation to another, you put a slash between them. A single forward slash can help you move from one generation to another. That is, if you write HTML slash body, you can simply move from HTML to the body. Now, if you write HTML slash body slash span, now after writing that, you are going to go to the span element. Now, the one thing that you would notice if you have done programming earlier here is that div here has been written as 2 for the second element in the hierarchy that we want to go. Now, if you are a programmer, you would question me and tell that, dude, it shouldn't be 1 because, yeah, in programming, everything, our counting starts at 0 and not 1. But yeah, in case of XPath and CSS locators, it starts at 1. But if you see later on when we are going to use some scrapey elements such as selector list, they follow your same typical logic of starting your counting at 0. Now, single forward slash is used to move from one generation to another. So this is in order to go to this div, we have to write the code HTML slash body slash div of 2. Now you would say, what is this 2? Now the tag names between the slashes gives your direction to which element. So these are the tag names. These are between slashes. Yeah. And one more thing that I always make a mistake, and you would obviously start making mistake, is that the HTML in the starting also has this forward slash. So bear that in mind that when you start coding with XPath, you need to start with your slash forward slash, and afterwards you can go. Now, brackets that are present, the brackets after a tag name tells us which siblings. So these also follow a family type of a structure. So the body has a parent called as HTML, and these span and divs are siblings. So if you, let's say, you want to go to a sibling div, you need to use these brackets. So this is a thing about XPath. So the three important things that I covered here is that, yeah, first of all, for the HTML code, it's better you make a tree structure, or as you start using it, within some time only it gets into your mind, so you can start writing even messy amount of HTML you could just figure out using XPath. So you need to go from your, let's say, HTML to body, and from body you can go to div or span, anything that. So for that you need to use a single forward slash, and for let's say these elements such as HTML, body, span, and everything, you are simply going to use a square bracket in order to go to the sibling. Yeah. Now the next thing that is very important that you guys need to understand is something called as the double slash. And double slash is one of the most important thing that you need to understand for the for XPath, because it is one of the most important thing and one of the most important feature for this XPath thing, because this helps you to go to any element that matches this element name. So if, let's say, I write double slash, let's say I want to write double slash let's say we write double slash p. then it is going to redirect me to each and every instances of the paragraph tag or paragraph element, that is p tag, p tag. It is going to provide me access to each and every one of them by returning a list there. So what this double slash makes easier is that when in the future, when we are going to start coding with this XPath, and we are going to apply it on the scrapey elements in order to make sense of the messy HTML, you would start understanding that what is here happening, that you could, let's say, one of the type of caption project that we are going to do at the end is that we're going to take my community's website, and we are going to find each and every person's name as well as each and every person's designation from that HTML document, and just do. So each and every of them is into a container called as div. So if you can access and every of div using your two single forward slash, you can easily do it. So I would just do the code afterwards. Just let me complete. Now, next is the second thing is called as, let's say you want to go to a particular div, because I told you earlier that we have attributes which are special information for the elements. So there needs to be a certain thing, and it happens using the at the rate symbol. What the at the rate symbol does is, like if you write at the rate class is equal to body class, it would only go to the div. Here it is not mentioned, but it would only go to the div which is simply going to have your attribute matches to this attribute value, that is body class. So in order to extract elements by their attributes, we are going to use the at the rate symbol. Now one more thing is, let's say in if you know something about HTML, there is something called as an anchor tag. Anchor tag is used to do hypertext reference, that is, it is used in order to link different parts of a website. So in case of that also, we may need to find out the href. That is, href is simply the link that you need to that you need to link in order to link people together. So what you can do is that you can write a XPath in order to go to each and every anchor tag, and after that make a slash and write at the rate href. And after writing at the rate href, what your response is going to come out of Scrapy is would be that each and every of the link is going to just return back to you. So this is your at the rate thing that we use. Now the main thing is that, as I told you, in case of an HTML element, that it comprises of your tags, your attributes, and something called as data. So how would you get the data out of? You simply apply all the other things that I told you earlier. You won't be able to get out if you won't be able to get out the text from that element. Yeah, it would be printed with the whole thing. That is, let's say if you try to print out paragraph element, it would be written as paragraph p, let's say hello world end tag. So the whole thing. But if you, let's say, only want to get that hello world thing, you are going to use something called as a text function. So afterwards, as you write the slash text function, you're going to get the text out of it. Now also one more thing, extra thing that is provided in case of your XPath is something of a wildcard character, that is star. Star can simply, if you people have a bit of knowledge about regular expressions, so these stuff quite a bit relate. So this star thing is something that it can relate to each and every of the element. It's simply going to relate to the element. So let's say I tell you, in order to find out, I write an XPath, that XPath equal to your quotes. Something like find double forward slash star. So it is going to match each and every element. So if you write this command in case of your XPath, so each and every element of your code is going to be returned, because what is going to be returned is something like your HTML is also going to get matched to your star, and P is also going to match, div is also going to match, your head, body, everything is going to match. So this is something about your XPath notations. Now we have your CSS locators, and let's go to the people who want to code with me can code with me and go to the code. So let me. So what I have done is that I've just made a sample HTML file, and I'm going to show you guys how can we parse this data. using your Scrapy and what I told XPath. Let me just make, so we just import the corresponding. Let's say if we get any errors, we need to check those. We import Scrapy. Now from, just bear with me, I will explain to you everything. From Scrapy, you import something called as a selector object. Now, what you're going to do is that you're going to make a cell, just an instance of the selector class, the cell object, and in let's say we are going to pass something called as a text. Okay. Now, for text, we need the HTML code, so I will make a variable ahead in it. Let me just copy the whole thing here. Yeah, multi-line string in Python. That is why this red line started coming. Now, what you can do is that from this thing, you can get something using XPath. So let's say I want to get what is in H1, that hello, I'm a web page. I need to get it from your XPath thing. So what I can do is like data equal to sel dot x path. Okay, XPath. Then I make, now I can do like, let's say for the beginning, we can go from HTML. We can jump to the body tag, go to H1 tag. Let's see if I do it, and I won't use the text now. We'll just see what we are getting. Let's print data and see if we don't get any error. Yeah, if you see here, I should have cleaned the terminal. I will just clean it. If you see, it is returning H1. Hello, I am a web page H1. So what you did was that you just wrote around 4 or 5 lines of code using Scrapy and XPath, and you got something out. Now this may look very trivial for now. That you may be like, okay, what does this is going to do and everything. But in the real life, these are the things that are used to build something such as crawlers that are used by companies such as Google. The whole Google thing is based on simply crawling website and extracting the data, because those websites need to crawl, these search engines needs to crawl these web pages using these what I'm showing you, these concepts, and then afterwards show you the data using their search ranking. So this is using your data. Let's say I've done. Now after that, let me just put the text function. So let's just print your data. Yeah, you see here it is getting printed. Hello, I am web page. So this is how you can do. Now let's say you would be like, mm, let me just create one more H3, come to webinar. Let's say I want to, you want to navigate to all the H3 elements present in this HTML code. and then you need to extract what's the text of them. So it is now very easy. You need not even go to body. Yeah, you can do it from here, but I'm going to show you much more than and show you why those two forward slashes were so much more important in order to understand. So if you're simply going to write h3 uh, there and start your text and extract it, you see that I am ready for scraping, welcome to webinar. Both of those texts are starting to print it out. So this is what your expert do. Now let's say you want to have let me show you the id concept also one time. So let's say you want to find out the h3 that has an id of bit grid. So what you would be going to do here is that you're going to use square brackets. You're going to use at the rate id equal to bit grid. As soon as you, let me just clean the terminal. As soon as you're going to do it, yeah, it's running. Yeah, you can see I'm ready for scraping is getting printed here. So this is something basic about XBAR that you guys need to know. And let's go to then CSS locators. Any doubt if anybody has, just please write it in the chat channel. I'm just going to clear it. Now, CSS locators and selectors are another method which are quite similar to what XPath are. That is, they are very much interoperable, and there is not much syntactical differences, and they can be chained together. So they are very much similar to your your XPath in that case, and they can be used in order to similarly extract HTML elements out of an HTML document. So for CSS selectors, as you guys must have understood XPath here, so CSS locators are not going to be very much difficult for you to understand because there is some uh, a bit type of your syntactical differences. So some fundamental changes, that is your forward slash gets replaced by a greater than sign. Your double slash gets replaced by a space, and then afterwards what is your bracket in order to choose your sibling gets replaced by your colon nth of type of bracket of n. So through that you can go to the element that you want to do. So your this gets changed, your single forward slash gets changed by your greater than sign, your double slashes gets replaced by space, and your uh, for in order to bracket of n in order to go to a sibling gets changed by your nth of time. So these are the three simple fundamental changes here. And the other changes are that in case of attributes, XPath helps us in order to find out the class value. In case of CSS locators, we have the class value. We can find out using a period. That is, if we write dot of, let's say, the class value, it will just redirect us to the element that have the dot class value. And the another one is going to be the ID thing. That is, if let's say we are going to use your ID, that is hash with the ID value, we are going to go to that HTML element. Now, in order to get text from the HTML element, we use the dot text. There we were using slash text of brackets. So here we are simply going to use dot text. And in order to get an attribute, let's say where there we were doing such as something like slash at the rate, we can here do something such as attribute of href, let's say for the anchor tab. So I'm just going to explain to you using the code only, directly through code. So make a new, just going to copy. everything in here. These were similar. This is something from Scrapy only we are doing. So your same your import OS for OS functionalities. If let's say I got any error or anything, it's easy to debug. We have the import Scrapy from Scrapy import selector, and we have these things. That is, this is the whole HTML code here, and afterwards we have the selector with the text equal to HTML. Let's say again we need to get some data from the HTML file. We are now going to use something called as .css for your CSS query, CSS locator selector query. So what it is going to be is, let's say I want to get the h3 element only. Okay, so I want to get the h3 element that has the id of bitgrid. So what I would do is that I would write h3 dot, yeah, not dot, your hashtag bitgrid. That is written, and then I am going to get the text out of it. So we are just going to write text, just print out the text here. I need to print out the data. Yeah, errors happen. Okay, so what we are here getting is that the selector xpath descendant or self is h3 id bitgrid text, and the data is that I am ready for scraping. So it is showing you the whole selector xpath. It is showing that this is your data that is using selector.css. You are going to get your h3 using your bitgrid of text, and similarly using your this CSS selectors and get anything else. Let's say we want to get the h1 there, so we can do something like HTML body h1 dot text. I'm going to extract out the text mode, print data of 1. So when I do this, going to see hello, I am a web page getting printed. So this is the thing about your thing, that if you are able to properly understand XPath, you can similarly go to your CSS locators or selectors. Now the thing about your CSS selectors is that, let's say if you are very much comfortable with XPath, because both of them uh, provide you with a simple purpose with some syntactical differences, so you can pretty skip CSS locator and work with XPath, and they won't ever create any issue regarding it. So we can go for our last thing. So time is also not that much. So let's go to your using web scraping using scraping. Now, first of all, Scrapy is the best thing about Scrapy is that it is an open source web crawling framework. So therefore, you need not pay anybody to use anything. It's open. It is hosted on GitHub. Download from there using Anaconda and everything, and start scraping. So it is currently maintained by a company called a Scraping Hub. So it provides you with even cloud services in order to, let's say, for proper crawlers, because what I am showing you is just scratching the surface of scraping and making you understand XPath and CSS, because they form the backbone of doing anything with scraping. Because the response that you get, you need to parse that using XPath as well as script. Now, its initial release happened in 2008. So we are going to do now a data extraction using Scrapy. So this is what I showed to you. So now what we are going to do is that we are going to go to a real website. This was just an meet going to a mock website. So this was the mock website. So what's the fun using any mock website? So let's go to www. So Microsoft Club SRM.in. So yeah, so this is the club where I'm working on. So let's say you're from an opposite community, opposite club, and you want to find out who are the people who are working, what are their IDs, what are their, let's say, designations and everything. So we would be something from an other type of a club or community, and we want to just scrape the whole of their team page. That is the whole team that is present there, be it who's the club lead, associate club lead, technical lead, associate technical lead, and stuff, who's the technical people who are working in the community, who are the creatives people, and stuff like that. You want to find out about them. And that is how something like this happens in it. So the main thing is that you need to first of all go to your developer options. So for something related to web scraping, these developer tools, be it you use Chrome, Firefox, Edge, using the Edge Chromium, so anything is possibly best. But so what we are going to do here is that we're going to scrape each and every person's name and their positions for a type of a project. So let's go. So I clicked on inspect elements. So after inspecting, if you guys know a bit about the development tools, it's going to show me the whole HTML. This is the whole HTML. You can see if I you can see all the various div and everything. Now, if you see, this guy's name is somewhere in the H4 class. Okay, it is somewhere in the H4 class with the card title, with the card title, whatever it is, your class. I just need the value for it. So Shantanu Agarwal's name is there. Now here is in the card subtitle, we have the club lead's name. In the card text, let's say help others, and this is a sample code for a code for each and every. We want to find out who are the people in the whole team. So we want to type of a, find out everything, and similarly, you are going to scrape out everything, let's say customers prices of a product or something like that. So what we're going to do is that we're going to copy the URL first of all. Now we are going to start a new type of a project. Let's say MS Club. Uh, Actually, your MS Club SRM.in is an club at SRM University. So yeah, we have your MSPs. Means I'm from the team, but we have Microsoft student partners who are leading the initiative. So I'm working in the community, and I have the privileges and everything because I was a person with the side team. So I can possibly do the scraping part, and if something happens, I won't be questioned that much. Let's say you try to scrape, because that is where your ethics come into play, because you're going to make a request here. There is something in your web development, a request response cycle. You being a client are going to make a request to a web server, and that web server is just going to take all the files and send it back to you as a response and your browser. So if you use a type of an automated script on something like an Amazon and everything, they have stuff in order to block you, ban you, and stuff like that. So the site does not till now. It is just for showing our work and everything. So that is why I'm using nothing. That is how it's different from data scraping in UiPath. Yeah, sure. I would share each and every. It would be posted on my GitHub at the end. So I would share to you my GitHub repo, and we would send out a mail, let's say, in order with all the data and everything. Yeah, we would share. We would share. I would tell my team to make note of the mail ID. So we would share to you each and everything and to other participants as well. So let's just import OS. Oh, Django. You're going to import something called as the request library. What a request does is it helps us to get the data, web data. Till now, what I was using is that I was just copying the data. So I'm going to make use requests here. Now from Scrapy, import your selector class. Now, first of all, I need to get the website data. So what I would do is that I would do requests get the pass down the URL and then get the content. Content is an attribute, so no brackets or stuff. So after getting the whole content here in this thing, let me first of all break the work and print out to see if we don't mess up with errors. So the HTML comes properly, we can continue working. Oh, there it goes. All the HTML data we got that was present on the team.html. Now let's start. So what we are going to do here is first of all, we yeah for YouTube comments and stuff, there are packages and libraries that are made for those specific means. In case of I can tell you something like for Reddit, in case of R we have something called as a Redditor. So obviously you need to make Google, and yeah, scraping, you can scrape everything, but now it is Bharat, but now it is possible that there are various things that can even block you. So that you need to be made sure that you need to be properly ethically sure that okay, if I scrape this company's data, because there may be something like if you try to scrape something and it turned out to be something like illegal or something that, let's say, you don't even know what you just wrote a random code and it scraped on, it may, yeah, it happen. Yeah, you can, just for knowing, I'm asking. Yeah, no problem about that. Yeah, you can scrape. You can scrape. But you need to find out the library. Scraping is something that it is done for general web scraping for sites and everything. So yeah, s- s- making the selector here using text here, website data. Let's say first of all we want to get the names of each and everybody, right? So it is located at an H4 class here. So let me just then make names equal to selector. I'm going to use XPath only, much more easy to do. So we are going to use the H4 and I'm using double slashes because I need to iterate to around some 40 members are present in our club. So H4 I'm going, then I'm going to use it's using some class there in order to identify it at the rate class equal to the rate class equal to card title, card title. Hmm, nice. Card title, card title. So that is your done card title, card title. Afterwards, I need to get the text out of this one. Text I need to get out of this one, and I need to just extract out everything out of this. Just extract out each and every. So just let's print one-time names to check if everything is properly working. Okay, we got an error, no problem. We will fix this one. I missed here this one, it went to here, and that is why the error came. No problem. So let's, yeah, cool. It came back with each and everybody who is there in the club. You can see Shantanu Agarwal, Prashant Vajpayee, Sneh Kumar, Shubham Rathore, Arya Shekhar, Himanshu Ratan, that's me, Abhirup Chatra, Rubal Sharma, Anisha Mohanty. So it scraped through each of the team members who are located here. Started from here, Shantanu Agarwal and everybody here that we all are located, and it then went from your core team to the technical team there, then to the creatives and public relation to the last. Let's check the last one, that is Vidushi Gupta, and she's there, she's located. So names are done. Let's go for your, let's go to these guys, designations. So names is done. Let's go to designations. So designations is equal to selector dot xpath star. It is using something called as an H6. Your H6, going to H6 with your, it is again using something of a class here called as. Is there any kind of legal issues while scraping data from external site? Yes, sir. There may be kind of issues with scraping data from external sites. Is actually there is something called that comes in an advanced part that I don't want to cover, but let me just tell you that there is something called as a robots.txt file that is present in case of each and every website's directory. It happens. So let's say you go to Coursera, and Coursera has all the list of courses, and some 2 to 3 days ago what I did was that I scraped all of their course directories. So in case of their robot.txt file, it was written, yeah, the site is perfectly okay for you in order to scrape. But the similar thing, that if let's say I go to Amazon or any other site and start scraping, the first thing is that if I don't use proper proxies, I'm going to be blocked there and then. So it is something, web scraping is obviously, if you have access to sites or there are public sites, it's very good, you can scrape, nobody is going to. But if let's say you try you scrape somebody's confidential data, in that case it is quite similar to what happens, that you may book not booked, I don't know about that, but it may be something like issues may come, like if you do illegal pen testing or something like on a person's site and try to make issues, so it may happen. And I have full access to this site, so I did not fear about this thing here. So what we are going to use, at the rate class equal to card subtitle. So what we are going to do here is use something called as card subtitle. After taking the card subtitle, I'm going to take the text only out of it. I don't need the selector query, and then I'm going to do dot extract all of them. Let's now just print there each and every of these guides designations. Print. Let's see. So yeah, you can see here each and everything from the site using your Scrapy. And using your XPath, I was able to get that club lead, club manager, technical lead, associate technical lead, and everything, associate corporate stuff like that. So I got all the designations. Now, what you would let's say we can just print it in a proper format and start wrapping our sessions. So you can get first of all the length and then just loop over everything. So I can take the length of, let's say, names, and after that I just write and range using your length, and afterwards I just print your names, print the names, I comma designations. Yeah, it's done. So we were successfully able to get each and every person's. That is Shantanu Agarwal, he's a club lead there. Prashant Vajpayee, associate club lead. Snake Kumar is the club manager. Everything. Me there, Rubel, everything, and going to the last, that is your Vidushi Gupta. So this is how your web scraping in real life happens. People are going to use it in order to scrap everything. So this brings me to the end of the code section also, as well as the everything. So I'm open to questions. If anybody wants, they can ask. Is there so robot.txt does not allow the site to be scrapped? No, sir, it's not robot.txt. That is robot.txt is simply going to tell to you that whether that site it's simply a text file. If you see robot.txt, so it's a text file. It is just simply going to say that okay, this site is scrapable and this site is not. I think so. We can even access. If you don't know, let me try to the matter. Uh, and yeah, obviously, this robot.txt thing is mostly not YouTube. It's mostly sometimes hidden or not publicly accessible for some site. Coursera, I think so, has robots.txt. Yeah. So if you see robots.txt, it is showing some type of an information that user agent allow. You can use the image proxy and stuff like that. What it is disallowing. So you can see here each and everything that is disallow the sitemap. So what I did was that I tried to get everything of the sitemap and stuff. So those things, if you're able to be allowed, your okay user agent can use these things, then it is okay with you. You are within your legal framework to scrape anything. It's best in order to refer to the robots.txt, but it's possible that many uh, websites and stuff like that, they may not even have the robots.txt mentioned. So this is done. Any more questions? Yeah, sure, sure. No problem. Fine, everyone. So thank you each and everybody in order to turn to Monday morning to a Sunday evening, Sunday afternoon, in order for us to know something about it. What are the ethics that you need to follow for your applications and your art of web scraping? Something related. I hope so. It may help you guys. And these everything, the whole session, each and everything is going to be posted on the channel, the YouTube channel of Bitgrid. So those will be posted, and these resources obviously is going to be shared as a message, I think so, by the team in order each and everything code samples. If anybody wants to refer, they may also be shared too. Thank you, everyone. Thank you for turning in.